50, because there were 20 in the back.
Lining up to get out.
Yeah. Yeah. Go in front of me.
If you go in the west line, you'll be asking a question.
No, I'm not.
Probably should have done this. Since both of us get a minute and a half, the whole goal was that if you want to berate me, you're over here. If you want to berate Wes, you're over here, with the idea that then we would have equal beratement time. And but whatever's fine.
Farming practices could be reformed such that it would be acceptable ethically to eat meat.
Well, I think that if you look at the global hunger argument or you look at the environmental argument, the National Audubon Society in January, they had a cover story on eating meat, and they argued that in fact the more sustainable the practices, the more resource intensive. And so you get better animal welfare, but it costs more resources, it causes more global warming, oftentimes it contributes more to desertification. So from an environmental standpoint or a global hunger standpoint, you're in a situation where if you get better animal welfare, the ethical argument against eating meat on environmental and global hunger grounds is exacerbated. It's even worse. I mean, I would argue that at its root, first of all, in the real world, the best farms, like polyface farms, which Michael Pollan glorifies, again, most people are driving hours to get there, so causing astronomical amounts of global warming for a little bit of meat, so environmentally, again, problematic. But he also mutilates those animals without pain relief. For eggs, he also tosses the male babies directly into grinders. The pigs still have their ears ripped. You go there, they still have their eye teeth cut out. It's like high-impact dental surgery without anesthesia. You're still paying for less cruelty to animals, but cruelty to animals that would be felony level if dogs or cats were treated similarly. So, my essential question is, would you do it yourself? Most of us wouldn't. And if you can choose to do something that's merciful rather than something that causes misery, shouldn't you?
Oh, yeah. Hello? Okay. On this question of idealized world versus practical reality, I think it is really important that we weigh in on what kind of a society that consumes meat we want to create. And then how do we take ourselves from the current society, which may not be there, and bring it to this idealized position, right? And if we, it's fine if Mr. Friedrich would like to disagree and say that there is no way possible for us to reduce suffering to a marginal level for animals, or to make it sustainable and environmentally sustainable in any way, that's fine. I don't think we can evaluate that claim here today, though. And I think the question is still out on whether or not we can do it in some sort of a sustainable and ethical way, even in the best way possible. We may not have that capability now, but that doesn't mean we won't have it in the future, nor that we should be moving towards that in the future. Because if it is, in fact, at some point in time, ethical for us to consume meat because they don't really suffer and they enjoy their lives, then what is problematic about that? Why is that so morally repugnant?
I would just go back to the National Audubon Society piece again, and the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which says that on global warming grounds alone, we shouldn't be eating any meat, no matter how the animals are farmed. On the issue of should we ever kill animals, it seems to me I wouldn't want to slit animals' throats open. We don't have to do it, even if they lead a good life. Shouldn't we choose not to kill when we can choose not to kill?
Hi, I'm John. My question's for Wes, obviously. It's a two-part question. The first one I want you to answer in one word. I'll slide to it. It's very simplistic.
I refuse to do it, Wes.
Say that you are forced to either A, stomp on someone's foot, or B, shoot them in the foot. Which would you choose?
Can I answer that with one word?
You can say A.
Okay. You can say shoot or stomp.
Stomp.
Be creative.
I would say stomp.
Okay. And my second question is, can you defend utilitarianism to me, please?
Because so you're trying to put me into a situation where because I said stomp instead of shoot, I'm clearly following a utilitarian guideline. The problem is, that's a good intuition, but at the same time it's not. Because it's fundamentally in many ways, social contract theory is about reciprocity. It's about how would we like other individuals to act towards us? What kind of responsibilities should other individuals have to act towards us? And I think I would much prefer not to be shot in the foot and rather be stomped in the foot, and so that's how I would rather act to other individuals, other human beings.
Okay, I think that generations from now, when the polar ice caps have melted, those people would rather they hadn't. But anyway.
I get 2 minutes too. I would also stomp. And the fact that you can say that stomp over shoot can be argued from a utilitarian standpoint doesn't necessarily mean that it's a utilitarian argument. It's also a deontological argument. You stomp rather than you shoot. It's also, an argument based on any faith. It's also an argument based on ethics in the real world. I mean, Wes was trying to say that my argument was utilitarian because you could make my argument in a utilitarian way. My argument is deontological. It's categorical imperative. It's when you have a choice between doing something that's environmentally sustainable or not, you go with environmental sustainability. If you have a choice between causing starvation and not, you go with not. If you have a choice between killing animals or causing them to suffer and not, you go with not. And yes, you can make that argument in the utilitarian way, as Peter Singer very famously has. You can make it in a deontological way, as Tom Reagan has, or you can make it in a very common sense way that involves the real world and the decisions that we're making in the real world. When you sit down to eat, you are making a choice. You may not see that choice directly in front of you, but you are making a choice. And for the same reason that most of us choose, when we can, to walk rather than drive, for the same reason most of us turn off the lights when we leave the room, for the same reason most of us would stop somebody on the street if they were beating a dog directly in front of us, if we're eating meat in a very real way, we are making environmentally unsustainable, global poverty promoting, cruel choices. We don't see it, but we're still doing it, and it's unethical.
I think there are a couple of responses to that. The first is that if it's a categorical imperative that we should not cause suffering, then if we still have a situation where the animal does not suffer, then we don't seem to have a problem or a conflict with the categorical imperative. You have to prove to me that there is something inherently wrong with killing an animal in this particular instance. Why are we depriving them of life, which is an inherent right, or some sort of situation there? Something which is actually rather hard to prove within a secular modern philosophy. Secondly, if we do in fact want to always choose the most sustainable option, we would often go to much greater extremes. What we might consider acceptable is often limited by social circumstances. The fact, Mr. Friedrich, that you're flying in about an hour or so, when you could have chosen to walk or gone in a more sustainable fashion, is still an example of this idea where you're being restrained not by ethical concerns, but by sort of societal concerns. I think it's sort of inconsistent.
Hello, my name is Chris. I'm a vegetarian, but a lot of my friends are meat eaters, and so I face this problem a lot at the dining halls where they will get too much of a dish that contains meat, and they'll end up either, they won't finish it, so they'll end up throwing it away. Is it at that point ethical to eat the meat as a vegetarian, because it will otherwise just go to the trash as opposed to actually being consumed by somebody?
Yeah, I mean, there are campuses that are going tray-free. And if Harvard's not doing that, you really should, because it's a huge problem just in terms of waste across the board. I think one would be hard-pressed to come up with an ethical argument against eating that meat. There are some strong aesthetic arguments against eating that meat, I suppose. The ethical argument that I have heard, which I'm ambivalent about, is that you're sending the message that it's okay to eat meat if you're choosing to eat that meat. Because most people see things in black and white, and they won't go, well, yeah, that's going to be thrown away. Otherwise, they'll just go, you are sending the message that eating animals is okay. I think that's questionable. I do feel I need to, since I have a little bit more time, to say that, the thing about ethics is that oftentimes it's dicey, right? Is it worth it for me to be here addressing you, talking about this issue? There's a trade-off. I've decided that it is worth it, and I don't have time to walk. So I chose to get on a plane. He talked about not using electricity. He talked about not wearing clothes, I think. In the situation, in his previous speech, the situation here is, what is the choice? It's not ethically dicey, right? I mean, I'm not saying you have to go to every possible extreme. You can just not eat. Not to cause starvation, or not to cause environmental problems, or not to cause